The outpost of Kelros was not a grand world. It was not covered in shining cities, nor was it blessed with wide oceans or fertile fields. Kelros was a mining colony, a place of dust, rocks, and endless tunnels carved deep into the planet's crust. Yet to the Union it was important. Beneath its surface lay rare metals used for starship hulls, reactor cores, and weapon systems. To the Valen Empire, those metals were a prize worth spilling rivers of blood for. On a gray evening, the warning sirens screamed across the colony. The workers left their drills and machinery behind, rushing for shelters. In the command center, a dozen alien officers gathered around glowing tactical screens. Their scales, fur, and shells reflected the flickering light as reports poured in. "Enemy fleet detected in high orbit," shouted Commander Relvac, his four mandibles clicking with nervous energy. His species, the Trelvori, were known for calm judgment, but even he could not hide his fear. "They came faster than expected," said Lerna, a tall, feather-crested officer from the Avri species. Her golden eyes darted between the data streams. "We thought we had weeks before they reached us. The main fleet is still 3 sectors away. We are alone." A silence settled over the room. Everyone knew what that meant. Alone, Kelros could not resist the Valens for long. The Insectoid Empire never attacked lightly. When they struck, they brought swarms of warships, legions of soldiers, and endless hunger for conquest. Relvac raised his voice. "Send the distress call. Call for reinforcements. Tell the Union we need every ship they can spare." The communications officer obeyed, tapping claws across the console. A signal burst out into space, carrying their plea for help to every Union relay in range. The message was simple. "Kelros outpost under attack. Reinforcements urgently required. Hold until relieved." As the transmission left, hope flickered in their hearts. Surely the Union fleet would respond. Surely trained legions and disciplined soldiers would come. Hours passed. The Valens descended. From the sky came black hull carriers, their engines glowing like embers. Drop pods rained down, crashing into the rocky plains outside the colony walls. The ground shook with every impact. From the pods spilled soldiers, towering insectoid warriors with blade-like limbs and armored carapaces. Their hissing cries echoed across the dust fields. The defenders, Trelvori, Avri, and other Union species, manned the colony's thin walls. Their plasma cannons fired, burning holes through the first waves, but for every Valen that fell, 2 more surged forward. The defenders fought bravely, yet their lines bent under the weight of numbers. In the command center, Relvac gripped the edge of the table. "Where are the reinforcements?" he muttered. "We cannot hold for long." Lerna placed a feathered hand on his arm. "They will come. They must." 2 days later, when hope was fading, the long-range sensors detected incoming transports. The message spread like fire through the outpost. Reinforcements had arrived. Cheers erupted among the tired soldiers. At last, the Union fleet had answered. They gathered at the landing field to greet their saviors. Relvac stood at the front, his mandibles clicking nervously as the first transport ship descended. Its engines blew dust across the plain, and its metal hull bore the fresh markings of the Union. Soldiers straightened their backs, waiting to see shining ranks of disciplined troops step out in perfect formation. The ramp opened. What walked down was not what they expected. They were tall, bipedal creatures wrapped in mismatched armor. Some wore helmets, some did not. Their uniforms were not identical. Their weapons looked rugged and scarred. They carried themselves with a strange looseness, not the stiff discipline of Union soldiers. And their faces, soft-skinned, expressive, and filled with something the aliens could not name, looked almost amused by the danger around them. The commander of the group, a broad-shouldered figure with dark eyes, stepped forward. His voice was calm but carried strength. "Outpost Kelros, we're your reinforcements. Name's Captain Hayes, Terran Expeditionary Corps." Relvac blinked, unsure if he had heard correctly. "Terrans, humans?" His mandibles clicked in disbelief. "But you are not trained Union legions. You are not what we requested." Captain Hayes tilted his head slightly. "You asked for reinforcements. You got them. We're here to fight. That's what matters." Murmurs rippled through the gathered defenders. The humans were newcomers to the Union, barely admitted as allies a few years ago. Their reputation was strange. Some said they were reckless, chaotic, even dangerous to work with. Others whispered they came from a death world, a planet so hostile that survival bred only toughness and madness. Lerna's feathers bristled. We needed disciplined forces. We needed trained soldiers of the line. Instead, they send Deathworlders. Hayes' expression did not change. Call us what you like. When the Valens come again, you'll be glad we're here. That night, the humans spread across the outpost. Instead of waiting for orders, they explored the terrain, examined the defenses, and began making changes. A squad of humans walked the walls, hammering extra plating onto weak points. Another group set up strange devices, metal barrels filled with flammable chemicals taken from mining stores. Some even went into the tunnels, planting explosives in places that made no sense to the alien engineers. The defenders watched in confusion. "Why are they scattering supplies?" asked a Trelvori officer. "Why are they digging holes outside the walls instead of strengthening them?" asked another. The humans only smiled and kept working. Captain Hayes gathered his officers around a crude map scratched into the dirt. "The Valens will attack tomorrow. They think you're weak. We're going to prove them wrong. Forget holding the walls. We fight on our terms." Relvac listened, his mandibles twitching with unease. "This is not Union doctrine. We are trained to hold positions with precision fire. What you describe sounds like chaos." Hayes looked at him calmly. "Chaos is exactly what we need. You've been fighting them their way. Now we'll fight them ours." The next morning, the Valens attacked again. Black swarms rushed the colony gates, hissing and clattering their armored limbs. Plasma fire rained down from the walls, but this time something was different. Before the Valens could reach the gates, the ground beneath them erupted. Hidden mines planted by the humans blasted holes in their formations. Dust clouds blinded their advance. From behind boulders, humans leapt up, firing rifles and throwing grenades. They did not stand in neat lines. They darted, crouched, and struck from unexpected angles. One squad even lured the Valens into a narrow pass where barrels of fuel had been hidden. A single shot ignited the trap, sending fire rolling across the battlefield. The defenders on the walls stared in disbelief. The humans were not disciplined. They were wild, unpredictable, and terrifyingly effective. By the time the sun set, the Valens were in retreat. Their bodies littered the plain, smoking wreckage scattered among them. The aliens of Kelros had survived another day, but not because of their own discipline. They survived because the humans, the Deathworlders, had turned the battlefield into something unrecognizable. Relvac stood on the walls, watching the strange warriors celebrate with laughter and rough voices. For the first time, he felt something stirring in his chest. It was not just relief. It was curiosity and perhaps a touch of awe. The colony of Kelros awoke to an uneasy calm. The dust outside the walls was stained dark where the Valens had fallen the day before. Smoke still rose from burnt wreckage, and the air carried the bitter scent of explosives. For most of the defenders, the victory still felt unreal. They had expected to be crushed under the insectoid swarm, yet they had survived. Not only survived, won. And it was not because of Union discipline or because of the training manuals they had drilled into their soldiers. It was because of the humans. Commander Relvac walked along the wall as the early light spread over the horizon. His mandibles clicked softly as he watched human soldiers repairing traps and setting new ones in the dirt fields. They worked with a strange mix of seriousness and humor. Some sang while stacking crates. Others argued loudly about whether to dig a trench deeper or fill it with sharpened stakes. To Relvac, it was chaos. To the humans, it seemed natural. Captain Hayes climbed up to the wall beside him. His armor was scratched, his face smeared with dirt, but his eyes carried the same steady calm. "You doubt us still," Hayes said. It was not a question. It was a quiet statement. Relvac hesitated. "You fight differently, not like soldiers, like—" He struggled for the word. "Like predators," Hayes gave a short laugh. "Predators survive. That's the point." Relvac studied him, uncertain. The Union valued order above all, lines, ranks, precision. Yet here was a species that tore the rules apart and called it survival. He wondered if such chaos could last. By midday, the colony's defenses were ready again. The humans had expanded their traps, lines of mines buried deeper, fuel barrels hidden under camouflage, and even tunnels dug outward from the mining shafts. Hayes called them rat runs, passages for quick strikes and ambushes. The other species watched with mixed feelings. Lerna, the Avri officer, kept shaking her feathered crest in disbelief. "This is madness," she whispered to Relvac as they watched humans set up slings made from mining cables. "They prepare as if they are playing some game, not fighting for survival." Relvac could not answer. He wanted to agree. Yet the memory of yesterday's victory weighed heavy. Against all expectations, the humans had been right. The Valons returned with the rising sun. Their carriers blotted the sky once more, dropping pods in greater numbers than before. The ground quaked with every impact. From the pods came more soldiers, their bladed limbs gleaming in the light. This time their ranks were heavier, thicker, moving with greater coordination. Inside the command center, alarms screamed. "They bring double the numbers of yesterday," a Trelvori officer shouted. "We cannot hold against this many," another cried, but Hayes only leaned over the map. "Good, more targets." The officers stared at him in disbelief. Relvac opened his mandibles to protest, but Hayes raised a hand. "Watch and learn." The battle began with thunder. The Valons surged forward, waves of chittering bodies racing toward the walls. Their weapons spat green energy bolts, slamming into the defenses. The defenders returned fire from the walls, plasma cannons glowing hot, but once again the humans did not wait for the enemy to reach the gates. Hidden mines tore open the front ranks. Barrels of fuel exploded in sheets of flame, scattering the insects into confusion. Then the humans moved. Instead of holding their positions, squads of humans left the walls, sprinting across the field. They darted into the smoke, firing rifles, throwing grenades, and vanishing into cover before the Valons could respond. One squad slid into the rat runs, disappearing underground. Moments later, explosions ripped through the enemy's rear lines where no defenders should have been. The aliens on the walls gasped. This was not a battle, it was chaos. Relvac gripped the rail, eyes wide. "They are leaving the safety of the walls?" "That is suicide." Lerna shook her head slowly. "No, look closer. It is not suicide. It is hunting." Captain Hayes himself led a strike squad. He dashed through the smoke, rifle in hand, shouting quick commands. His soldiers moved with sharp instincts, covering each other, laying down fire, planting charges, and always moving. They did not fear the swarm. They dove into it, tore it apart, and vanished before the Valons could regroup. One human crouched behind a rock, calmly assembling a strange launcher from spare pipes. With a grin, he fired it, launching a cluster of sharpened metal rods into the Valons' midst. The swarm broke apart under the unexpected weapon. Another human climbed a ridge and hurled grenades in quick succession, laughing as each blast sent insectoid warriors flying. The defenders on the walls felt their fear melting into something else, astonishment, and perhaps admiration. The Valons tried to adapt. They gathered into tighter formations, raising heavy shields against the humans' scattered attacks. They pushed forward with brute strength, determined to crush through the traps and chaos. For a moment it seemed they might succeed. Their mass pressed close to the gates. The defenders braced, certain the walls would soon fall. Then Hayes gave a signal. The tunnels beneath the ground ignited. Explosives planted by humans collapsed the earth itself, swallowing entire ranks of Valons into gaping craters. Dust and screams filled the air. The swarm broke apart once again. Hayes's voice rang out over the comms. "Push them back." The humans surged forward, their wild attack scattering the swarm. Plasma fire from the walls cut down the stragglers. The Valons' advance crumbled. Within minutes they were retreating, hissing in rage. When the battle ended, the field outside Kelros was littered with broken pods and charred carapaces. The defenders stood on the walls silent, staring at the humans below. They had not fought like soldiers. They had fought like something else entirely. Relvac descended to the field, approaching Hayes. The human commander wiped dirt from his face, his expression calm as if the battle had been nothing unusual. "You left the walls," Relvac said slowly. "You abandoned the standard formation, yet you survived. More than that, you forced them to flee." Hayes gave a small shrug. "We fight to win, not to follow a book. The Valons expect order. We give them chaos. That's how Deathworlders survive." Relvac tilted his head. "Deathworlders." That word again. "What does it mean?" Hayes' gaze grew distant. "It means we come from a place that tries to kill us every day. Poison plants, storms, predators with teeth bigger than a man. On Earth, weakness means death. So we learn, we adapt, we fight back. That's what we bring here." Relvac was silent, his mind racing. No wonder the humans fought differently. No wonder they laughed in the face of danger. To them, danger was life itself. That evening, the colony was alive with new energy. The defenders, once doubtful, now looked at the humans with respect. Some even asked to join them, eager to learn their strange tactics. The humans welcomed them, showing how to set traps, how to move fast, how to think like hunters instead of prey. For the first time, Kelros felt united, not by union discipline, but by the spirit of survival. Lerna watched the humans teaching her soldiers. She whispered to Relvac, "I still think them reckless, but perhaps recklessness is what we need." Relvac's mandibles clicked softly. Perhaps. Above them the stars glittered. Somewhere out there, the Vaylans were regrouping, preparing to strike again with even greater fury. But now Kelros had something new. Not just reinforcements, Deathworlders. And the galaxy would soon learn what that meant. The dust storms of Kelros swept across the colony walls as the sun dipped low, painting the sky in hues of red and gray. The outpost stood scarred but unbroken. Fires from the last battle still smoldered in the fields where the Vaylans had fallen. Inside the command hall, the alien officers gathered once again. They stood around the holographic map, their faces grim but no longer hopeless. Their eyes often strayed to one side of the room, where Captain Hayes and a few of his human soldiers lounged casually, as if they had not just fought a desperate battle. One human leaned against the wall, calmly cleaning a rifle. Another sat cross-legged on the floor, sharpening a knife with slow, steady strokes. Their voices were low, filled with laughter and quiet jokes. To the alien commanders, it felt almost disrespectful in the aftermath of war. But there was also something unsettlingly comforting about it, like they were unshaken because they had seen worse. Relvac's mandibles clicked softly as he studied them. Finally, he asked, "Why do you not rest? You fought harder than any of us, yet you act as if the battle was nothing." Hayes looked up, his dark eyes calm, because it wasn't unusual. This is just another day for us." The aliens exchanged uneasy glances. Lerna, feathers bristling, stepped closer. "Another day? You mean to say you face such danger often on your world?" Hayes gave a faint smile. "Every day." The room grew quiet. The officers leaned closer as Hayes spoke, his voice steady and clear. "Earth is not like your homeworlds. It is not gentle. It is not forgiving. Our skies hold storms that tear cities apart. Our lands are filled with predators that hunt with teeth and claws. Even the plants are dangerous. Some poison, some strangle, some grow thorns sharp enough to cut through flesh. And that is just nature. Add famine, disease, and the struggles of our own kind, and you see why we are the way we are." One of the younger alien officers shook his head in disbelief. "How could such a species survive in a place like that?" Hayes's smile grew sharper. "By becoming stronger than everything that tried to kill us. On Earth, weakness is punished quickly. We learn to adapt, to build tools, to fight back. We learned never to stop moving, never to stop trying. That is what being a Deathworlder means." The word echoed in the room. Deathworlder. Relvac felt the hairs along his shell stand on end. Suddenly, the humans' strange tactics made sense. They had grown up fighting not just wars, but the very world around them. To them, the Vaylans were simply another predator to outwit. Over the next days, the humans did not let the colony rest in old habits. They spread through the outpost like restless energy, dragging others into their ways. One squad of humans taught Avri soldiers how to move silently across rocky ground, using shadows for cover. Another showed Trelvery miners how to turn spare equipment into weapons. They stripped wires from old machines, filled barrels with volatile chemicals, and built traps from scraps. At first, the aliens were hesitant. Their training told them battles must be clean, organized, and predictable. But the humans laughed at the rules. "Predictable gets you killed," one human told a group of Avri recruits, handing them sharpened metal shards. "Think like your enemy. Where will they move? How can you make them pay for every step? Don't be a target. Be the danger." Lerna watched these lessons with unease. "You are teaching them to abandon order," she said to Hayes. Hayes shook his head. "No, we are teaching them to survive. Order has its place, but against the Vaylans, chaos works better." Relvac, though still cautious, began to see the truth. The outpost was changing. Soldiers who had once stood rigid in formations now moved with sharper instincts. Their fear was fading, replaced with something else: hunger to fight back. The Vaylans did not give the colony long to prepare. Within a week, their ships returned, this time larger and heavier. The swarm that descended was greater than before. their commanders furious at repeated defeats. From the walls, the defenders saw the black tide of warriors spilling across the plains. The ground trembled under their march. Plasma bolts streaked through the sky. "Here they come again," Hayes said calmly, adjusting his rifle. "Remember what you learned. Make them regret every step." The battle erupted with thunder. This time the defenders did not cower behind the walls. Guided by human tactics, they fought with new cunning. Avri soldiers, once rigid and formal, now spread into the rocks, striking from high perches and vanishing before the swarm could respond. Trelvori troops used explosives hidden in mining carts, sending them rolling down slopes into the Vaylon's ranks. Even civilians took part, guiding enemies into traps laid in the tunnels. The humans moved everywhere, swift and unpredictable. Their laughter echoed across the field as they struck, vanished, and struck again. Relvac watched from the command post, astonished. They fight like humans now." Lerna's feathers bristled, her eyes wide. "They fight like Deathworlders," the Vaylons pushed hard. Their numbers were overwhelming, their hisses filling the air. They brought heavier weapons, massive cannons that blasted chunks from the colony walls. But the defenders did not break. Every advance was met with mines, fire, or sudden ambushes. The swarm grew frustrated, splitting apart to chase elusive targets. That only made them easier prey. At one point, a squad of Vaylons forced its way close to the gates. Before they could break through, a team of humans launched themselves from a hidden trench wielding makeshift flamethrowers built from mining fuel. The swarm shrieked and fell back in panic. By nightfall, the field outside the colony was littered with smoking wreckage once more. The Vaylons retreated, leaving behind hundreds of their dead. The defenders, bruised and exhausted, cheered in disbelief. They had done more than survive, they had dominated. That night, the colony felt alive in a way it never had before. Soldiers shared food and stories with the humans, eager to hear more about Earth. Around fires, the humans spoke of storms that could tear down cities, beasts that stalked the night, and oceans so vast they swallowed fleets whole. To the aliens it sounded impossible. To the humans it was simply home. Relvac sat across from Hayes, still struggling to grasp it. "You mean to say your people face dangers like this every day? And still you built ships, reached the stars, joined the Union?" Hayes nodded. "That's what humans do. We fight through the impossible until it bends. That's why we're here. The Vaylons may be strong, but we've fought worse just to live." Relvac's mandibles clicked softly. He felt a weight lift from his chest. For the first time, he believed they could truly win. Lerna, listening nearby, finally spoke. Her golden eyes glowed in the firelight. "Perhaps the Union was right to bring you. You are not like us. You are something different. Something the Vaylons will never understand." Hayes gave a quiet smile. "We're Deathworlders. That's enough." Far above the planet, the Vaylon commanders seethed. Their swarm had been broken again, and by a colony that should have fallen easily. Reports spoke of strange tactics, unpredictable enemies, and heavy losses. They had underestimated the humans. That mistake would not be made again. And down on Kelros, as the defenders rebuilt and prepared for the next storm, a new spirit burned among them. They were no longer a frightened outpost waiting for rescue. They were hunters now. They had learned from the Deathworlders. The sky above Kelros darkened as the largest Vaylon fleet yet arrived. Dozens of warships blocked the light of the stars, their black hulls glowing with eerie green energy. From orbit, endless drop pods fell like burning meteors, striking the plains with thunderous force. The ground shook for hours, dust rising into the air until the horizon was nothing but a storm of shadow. Inside the outpost, every heart trembled. This was not another raid. This was a full war host. The Vaylons had come with their entire might, determined to crush the colony once and for all. In the command hall, officers argued in panic. "They bring more than we can ever face," cried a Trelvori soldier, mandibles clattering. "This is the end." "They will break through in a single day," shouted another. "We must abandon the colony, escape while we can." Relvac slammed his clawed hand on the table. "Enough, we cannot abandon Kelros. Without its metals, the Union fleets cannot fight. If Kelros falls, more worlds will fall with it." But even as he spoke, fear gnawed at him. He turned toward Captain Hayes, who stood silent by the wall, arms folded. Unlike the others, the human commander showed no panic, no despair. His expression was calm, steady, and sharp. Finally, Relvac asked, "What do you say, human? You see their numbers. Do you still believe we can survive this?" Hayes looked him in the eyes. Survive? No, surviving is not enough anymore. We're going to bleed them until they wish they'd never come here, and then we're going to break them. The room fell silent. Even the loudest officers stared at him, stunned. "You speak madness," Lerna whispered, feathers trembling. Hayes shook his head. "I speak from experience. Back on Earth, we faced enemies stronger, faster, and more dangerous than us, but we never gave them the fight they wanted. We gave them the fight they couldn't handle. That's how we'll beat the Valens." Preparations began at once. The humans spread across the outpost, setting plans in motion that left the aliens bewildered. They didn't strengthen the walls, those would fall soon enough. Instead, they built hidden tunnels, placed charges in abandoned mines, and set ambush points miles from the colony. "We are not waiting for them to come to us," Hayes explained to Relvac. "We'll take the fight to them. We'll strike their supply lines, their command posts, their heavy weapons. We'll tear the spine out of their swarm." Relvac hesitated. "That is not defense, that is attack." Hayes' eyes narrowed. "Exactly. The best defense is to make the enemy bleed more than you." Soon, mixed squads of humans and aliens began slipping into the night, carrying explosives, rifles, and blades. They moved through the canyons and rocky passes, striking where the Valens least expected it. One squad ambushed a column of Valen carriers moving supplies. Mines hidden in the dirt erupted beneath the vehicles, and fire rained down from the cliffs above. When the dust cleared, nothing remained but smoking wreckage. Another team infiltrated an enemy camp at night, cutting through the outer guards and planting charges on their heavy artillery. The explosions lit the desert like a sunrise, and the defenders returned before dawn, grinning despite their exhaustion. The colony's soldiers, once frightened and rigid, now fought with cunning and fire. They had learned well from the humans. The Valens grew furious. They had expected a broken outpost, weak prey to crush under their claws. Instead, they faced an enemy that struck from shadows, vanished into tunnels, and attacked where they were weakest. In their command hive, the Valen overlord screeched in rage. His swarm mind pulsed with anger, ordering his legions to sweep every canyon, every tunnel, every hidden place. But for every trap they found, 2 more waited. For every ambush avoided, another struck from behind. Kelros was no longer prey. It had become a predator's nest. On the 3rd night, Hayes led a mission himself. His squad included humans, Avri sharpshooters, and Trelvori miners who had turned into saboteurs. Their target was bold, the Valen command structure itself. They crawled through a canyon under moonlight, moving in silence. Ahead, towering above the battlefield, rose the Valen hive node, a massive organic structure pulsing with green light. It was the center of their communication, the brain of the swarm. Destroying it could throw the entire army into chaos. The squad hid among the rocks, studying the patrols. Dozens of insectoid guards prowled around the hive node, their armored limbs gleaming. Hayes whispered, "We don't need to kill them all. We just need to open a hole, plant the charges, and run like hell." The Trelvori saboteurs nodded nervously, clutching their explosives. The Avri raised their rifles, feathers bristling in anticipation. On Hayes' signal, the squad struck. Silenced shots dropped the first guards. Explosives tore through a patrol line. The humans rushed forward, cutting down enemies with brutal speed. The saboteurs dashed to the hive node's base, planting charges deep into its glowing structure. The Valens swarmed in fury, screeching and hissing. The squad fought desperately, every second a struggle against overwhelming numbers. "Charges set," a Trelvori shouted, voice trembling. "Fall back," Hayes roared. They sprinted through the canyon as green bolts tore the ground around them. Several fell, cut down by enemy fire, but the rest ran harder, lungs burning. Behind them, the charges detonated. The night exploded in fire. The hive node shattered, collapsing in a storm of flame and broken carapace. Shockwaves rippled through the swarm, their unity faltering. Confusion spread like wildfire as Valen soldiers staggered, screeching in disarray. The squad stumbled back into the outpost hours later, exhausted, bloodied, but alive. The defenders met them with cheers that shook the night. Hayes simply raised his hand, his face calm. "That's how you fight a war host. You cut off its head." But victory came at a cost. Dozens of defenders had been lost in raids and sabotage missions. Supplies were running low. Ammunition was nearly spent, and the colony's food stores were dwindling. In the command hall, Relvac studied the reports with heavy eyes. We cannot keep this pace. If the Union fleet does not arrive soon, even your cunning will not save us. Hayes looked at him steadily. Maybe not, but we'll make sure the Vaylons pay for every step they take. If we fall, they'll remember us, and they'll never look at humans the same way again. Lyrna shivered at his words, her feathers trembling. You speak as though death does not frighten you. Hayes's expression softened. Of course it does, but fear doesn't stop us. On Earth, fear is a companion. We walk with it, learn from it, and keep moving anyway. Relvac felt a strange warmth inside his chest. These humans were not like any soldiers he had ever known. They did not fight for orders or for glory or even for survival alone. They fought because it was in their nature, to resist, to endure, to never give up. The days stretched on, each one a trial. The Vaylons pressed harder, throwing more soldiers at the outpost. The walls shook under bombardment. Tunnels collapsed under enemy fire. The defenders fought until their hands bled, then fought more. And always at the center were the humans, laughing, shouting, daring the impossible. Their courage spread like fire, burning away despair. When the Vaylons finally launched their greatest assault, an endless tide of warriors sweeping toward the colony, the defenders stood ready. Exhausted, battered, but unbroken, Hayes lifted his rifle and spoke into the comms, his voice clear and steady. They think this is the end. Let's show them what it means when you stand against Deathworlders. And with a roar, the defenders charged into the storm. The battlefield of Kelros was a wasteland. Smoke still rose in columns from cratered plains. Twisted metal, shattered rocks, and the broken carapaces of the Vaylons littered every path. The ground trembled faintly under the distant rumble of retreating pods and fleeing enemy legions. Inside the outpost, soldiers moved cautiously, tending to the wounded, repairing damaged walls and counting supplies. Despite exhaustion, there was no fear. Not anymore. They had survived the impossible. They had survived because of the humans, because of the Deathworlders. Captain Hayes stood on a ridge overlooking the plains, his rifle slung across his back. His dark eyes scanned the horizon, where Vaylon forces had withdrawn into the distance. Behind him, humans and aliens worked together, moving as a unit that had grown stronger in chaos. Relvac approached, mandibles clicking softly. They are gone for now, but the outpost has suffered greatly. We have lost many brave souls. Hayes nodded, his expression calm. We always pay a price. But the important thing is we survived, and the enemy learned a lesson they will not forget. Lyrna stepped forward, her feathers ruffled from battle but standing proudly. You speak of lessons, Captain, but what lesson could they possibly learn from humans? Hayes smiled faintly. That you cannot predict us, that you cannot control us, that we fight differently and we fight harder. That's what it means to face a Deathworlder. The Union fleet finally appeared on sensors hours later. Massive ships entered Kelros's orbit, their bright hulls reflecting the sun like a mirror. Pilots reported the smoke rising from battlefields below. Comms were filled with voices of relief, officers thanking the colony for holding, Union generals inquiring about damage and losses. Relvac and Lyrna watched the fleet, their hearts lighter, yet uneasy. They had survived without the Union. In fact, it was the humans' leadership and tactics that had saved them. A fleet officer hailed the outpost. Kelros Outpost, this is Admiral Rivik of the Union Fleet. We received your distress signal. Are you secure? Are reinforcements still needed? Relvac's mandibles clicked and he looked at Hayes. Admiral, we are secure. Kelros stands. But it is not because of your fleet. It is because of these humans. Hayes shrugged. Better late than never, I suppose. But you'll see, Admiral. We fought in ways you wouldn't believe. The Union ships descended to the landing fields. Troops poured out, fully equipped and disciplined, ready to restore order. Yet they froze when they saw the state of the battlefield. Craters, smoke, and scattered corpses of Vaylons littered the ground. Among it, humans walked casually, rifles in hand, chatting with alien soldiers and civilians alike. Some carried supplies, others helped the wounded. Union officers whispered among themselves. This was not the order they expected. They expected panic, retreat, and destruction. Instead, they saw victory forged in chaos. Admiral Rivik approached Hayes, astonishment evident on his face. Captain, how did you manage this? You were supposed to be a small reinforcement squad. Hayes smiled calmly. We didn't fight like small reinforcements. We fought like survivors of a death world. We adapted, we improvised, and we turned their strength against them. That's what humans do. The Admiral blinked, then nodded slowly. I see, and the rest of your team? They are learning fast. These aliens are becoming Deathworlders too, Hayes said, glancing at Relvac and Lerna. Both nodded in agreement. The Valens had retreated across the plains and back to orbit, leaving the colony in relative peace. The humans did not celebrate recklessly. Instead, they inspected the battlefield, retrieved usable weapons, and tended to the wounded. Relvac joined Hayes as he surveyed the work. I underestimated humans, he admitted. I thought you were reckless. I thought you would fail. Hayes shook his head. No, Commander. Recklessness is a misunderstanding. We do not ignore danger. We study it. We learn from it. We bend the rules of battle so the enemy cannot predict us. That is what makes Deathworlders effective. A young Trelvori soldier approached. Captain, we want to be trained like you. We want to fight as humans fight. Hayes crouched to meet the soldier's gaze. Then you start now. Adapt. Think differently. Use everything around you. Turn the impossible into survival. That's how you become a Deathworlder. The following week saw Kelros rebuilt. Humans and aliens worked together to restore the colony, stronger than before. Defensive walls were reinforced, supply lines were secured, and civilians learned tactics that would keep them safe. The humans trained others in ambush techniques, improvised weaponry, and guerrilla tactics adapted for alien environments. News of Kelros's survival spread quickly through Union channels. Across the stars, other colonies whispered about the humans who had arrived as reinforcements, but had instead changed the entire way the outpost fought. Deathworlders, they called them. A word once unknown now carried respect, fear, and awe. Even seasoned Union officers admitted quietly that the humans' methods, though unconventional, had saved the day. Months later, the outpost sent a report to the Union fleet. Kelros outpost survived the Valen onslaught. Reinforcements arrived as requested, but what we received were Deathworlders. Their tactics, courage, and improvisation saved this colony. Union fleets should take note. When humans fight, expect the unexpected and hope they are on your side. The report went viral across Union networks. In briefing rooms, officers repeated the phrase with newfound respect. Deathworlders, they said. If you call for reinforcements and humans answer, be prepared for victory and chaos. Back on Kelros, Captain Hayes walked the plains with his squad. The sky was clear now, stars twinkling above. Smoke rose faintly from distant craters, reminders of what had been endured. Relvac fell into step beside Hayes. You have changed this place, Captain. Not just the battle, but the spirit of the defenders. They are not just soldiers anymore, they are hunters, like you said. Hayes nodded. That is the legacy of a Deathworlder. Not just surviving, but inspiring others to endure, adapt, and fight beyond what they thought possible. You fought well, Commander. But remember this. Fear is only as strong as you let it be. Courage is what you teach yourself every day. Lerna walked nearby, feathers shimmering in the twilight. I see it now. Humans are not reckless. They are relentless, adaptable, fearless in a way we could not imagine. I will never doubt a Deathworlder again. The colony thrived in the weeks that followed. The Valens did not return for months, wary of the defenses and cunning traps that awaited them. Humans taught the alien soldiers to move, think, and fight differently. Union fleets passed through Kelros, no longer seeing it as a fragile outpost, but as a bastion of resistance. Captain Hayes's name became known among the stars, though he never sought glory. The term Deathworlder spread in whispers and reports, a title of honor that marked a warrior who had faced the impossible and triumphed. At night, he would stand on the ridge, watching the stars. Somewhere, out there in the galaxy, other colonies would call for reinforcements, and somewhere the Valens would remember the humans who had turned their assault into ruin. Kelros had survived. Against overwhelming odds, through fire and chaos, humans and allies had fought as one, and the galaxy had learned something crucial. When humans arrive, victory comes, even if it comes in ways no one expects. The legend of the Deathworlders had begun,